Ryan and I are back today with our full preview for Luthier from Paverson Games. We do have some content up on the channel.
A little bit.
But it is a small amount. We focused on sort of splaying the whole game out for you and talking about one mechanic in particular. Today we're going to talk about a few more of the mechanics. We don't want to get into a full how to play, but we are going to give you kind of a general idea of what the game is doing, but really zero in on a few things that we think are interesting.
Yeah, well, here's one thing, and I always say, don't judge a game by its cover,
but
this cover, I'm absolutely judging. It's fantastic. One thing that they really put into this was a love for the theme. This is about creating music. This is about making classical music in all forms, but really it's about being a luthier, which is a person that makes instruments.
And repairs instruments.
This is not a person's name, as I guess a lot of people thought.
No, that's what I thought. That's what other people thought too.
This is a profession. And so in this game, you're going to be doing that. You're going to be creating instruments. You're going to be repairing instruments, but you're also going to be creating music for patrons, and you're going to be composing music. And all of this is kind of designed in such a way that you're learning about this time period and these musicians while you're playing it. A lot like in their previous game, Distilled, where you're kind of learning about the process of making alcohol. This is going to teach you. You're going to walk away recognizing some composer names that you probably never knew. For sure.
Like Distilled, this really weaves in theme very, very well. Unlike Distilled, where I think Distilled is squarely a medium weight game, if that, this is definitely a medium to heavy weight game.
I would say so. And I think one of the reasons that it's so heavy is because of that worker placement mechanic that we talked about a little bit before, that we'll talk about more now. Because as you're placing workers, you're placing different strength workers in different locations, which, that makes sense. You've seen that in worker placement games before. But the players themselves are going to decide on their turn which actions resolve. And that's where the game kind of starts to really mess with your mind, because you're placing your discs out, and there's only 5 actions on the board you can take and 2 on your individual player board. Those on your individual player board are safe, but the 5 out here, you don't know the order that they're going to resolve. So you can't plan to go here, get something, use it over there, and then go do this third thing, because it might not happen in that order.
Yeah, order of operations is going to be important. You're going to want to take that into consideration. One thing we didn't just mention is the fact that when you're placing your discs out there, they are of varying strengths, but it's a blind bidding situation. So those discs are all face down. So when you do resolve a location, you're going to flip them over, and this is kind of a cool thing. You flip them over and then put them here in not only the order they were placed, that's really just going to break ties, but you're going to put them here in the order of the strength. So the discs at the beginning of the game, you have a 1, a 3, and a 5, and then throughout the game, you're going to get a 2 and a 4 as well. Not to mention, you're going to get some of these assistants that you can add while you're placing your discs to sort of increase those by 1. There's a lot of different things that might go into play when you're placing your discs. You might even get some bonuses that just always increase the strength of a worker placed in that location, things like that.
Yeah, and all of these locations kind of resolve in a similar fashion in that there are cards that you're going to take. You're either taking composers from the salon, different performances from over here, you're taking instruments to build from the guild, or repairing. But you'll notice that there's a certain number of cards out based on the number of players. Some of those cards are free to take. Some of those cards have a cost associated with them. So if you think you're going to grab that free one, but somebody went there, and you'll see it, you put a disc down, then they put a disc, and they start stacking assistants on top, and you go, oh no, I might not get the free guy. That's very important in the timing of the game, and I think that's what makes it a little heavier, because you really do need to prepare. Now, there is a secondary action that you can take, so you're never just like completely blocked. There's always something that you can get, and sometimes you'll want to take that secondary benefit anyway.
Yeah, it's not just a throwaway action. You might go, I went in our play a number of locations and specifically took the secondary action, because oftentimes it's going to give you some of the materials that you want. This one gives you an assistant or some inspiration, which is a resource that you can kind of use in place of a number of different things. But yes, if you go there and you miss out on that one patron that you were wanting, or that one instrument, and you're like, I really don't want the other instruments, or I don't want to pay for those things, then you can take that secondary action. Not to mention, each of them has a bonus if you go there with a certain strength of workers. So if I reveal a 4 here, I think it's 4 on any of the board spaces, you're also going to be able to do an extra little thing. And when you're placing your discs, like I said, you have the 1, 3, and the 5. So at the beginning of the game, you're going to be basically firing off one of those bonuses in one of the locations. But man, every time you place one, you're like, oh, I wish I could.
Yeah, I wish I could. I want all the 4 benefits.
I want all the 4 benefits.
And so then after everybody has placed their discs in turn order, starting with whoever is the first player, they're going to resolve a location, like David mentioned, and everyone's going to resolve that. You don't get to choose to wait. So if you were planning on repairing, but you needed to, for example, go to the market first, which is an action you can take. You could go to the market. If you needed to go to the market to get those, and I see that you don't have the resources, I might choose to resolve repair first, knowing that you're not going to be able to actually repair.
Yeah.
And it can throw a big wrench into people's plans. And so looking around at the table, trying to guess what other players are doing, it's a little easier in a 2-player game, but in a 4-player game, it gets crowded out here, and you're biting your nails wondering, am I actually going to get to do the thing I wanted to do on my turn? And a lot of the game is about pivoting. If you can't get the thing you need, try to make do with what you can actually get done.
Yeah, for sure. And we will point out, because I know a lot of people out there ask, oh, what's the differences between 2 and 4? I do think this is one area where I think we want to mention, like Ryan just alluded to. In a 2-player game, you're going to have a lot less competing for locations. I think when we played 2 players, there's maybe once or twice in a couple rounds that we had that going on. But oftentimes, you want to kind of go where you know that you're going to have some control over
and that's the benefit of being last, is you can just choose, like nobody went to guild, I know I'm guaranteed to get the one that I want. And we mentioned the player board too. When you place on your player board, nobody can choose to like trigger your player board. Those are safe as well. So you can kind of plan it out in such a way. And also, like, as you play the game and learn, you start to realize, okay, well, I'm going to go to the market at the end of my turn to get resources for what I want to do next turn. That way it doesn't matter what order things get triggered. But it is always going to come into play. There's going to be a moment where you go, drat, like, I can't believe I didn't get the patron I needed. Because really, a lot of what you're doing in the game does revolve around those patrons, and they do play like a significant part in what you're doing. So we're not going to teach the whole game, but we did definitely want to talk about how these patrons work, because that's very thematic too as well.
Yeah, you're going to start the game with a patron. Some of the characters might even start with more than one patron.
Asymmetric powers.
There's asymmetric powers that are truly, at least starting-wise, not just starting resources differences, but each Luthier family gets to do something very unique. But the patrons are going to go in one of these 3 spots. And when you put one down, you're going to get a bonus. You're going to take more from here and place them. The game mostly is all about making these patrons happy, or at least that's a big part of managing these patrons. Because when you place them down, there's a little line across the bottom that shows a couple gifts they're going to give, and then the last icon is them losing patience with you. You haven't done what they wanted you to do. They'll give you gifts as long as you keep them happy. Keeping them happy requires you to do some things like building specific instruments, maybe performing a certain type of music, or maybe repairing a certain type of instrument. When you do that, you're able to reset this patience marker that's in between them or below them, because when you place them down, you're going to have this patience marker. At the beginning of every round, that patience marker is going to move up. They're going to give you that gift. But like I said, if it moves to the end, they're going to say, goodbye. We're not happy with you anymore.
We've wasted all of our money.
So during your turns, if you're able to do some of those things that they're looking for, it'll actually reset their patience, which is nice. And this is one of those pacing sort of things, because sometimes you're going to want to say, oh, my instinct is to, okay, I'm going to take this patron, and then, oh, I can make him happy immediately.
Yeah.
You can do that. That's fine. That is one way to go. But you might also want to sort of pace that over a couple turns so that you get those
You're
gifts.
milking them. You're milking the patrons. You're like, giving them a little bit here, maybe a performance here, an instrument here. And if you can get 3 out at a time, that's a lot of gifts you're getting every round.
Yeah, and when you make them happy, what's great is they're going to flip over, and there's an ongoing bonus. You're going to tuck them under your board, and across the top of your board, you're going to see all of these bonuses you get. Some of those are going to be things like at the beginning of the round, get 2 inspiration, stuff like that. I have one here that says every time I take the repair action, I can repair for 1 less resource, which is huge.
That is huge. Resources
so you can
are tight.
Definitely get, I don't know if I'd say an engine, but you can get some cards that synergize together so that you can be very good at one thing.
So everything you're doing kind of in the game is twofold. for one, everything you're doing is influencing those patrons and trying to make those patrons happy, but you're also kind of fighting over the orchestra as well. So whenever you do a performance well enough, whenever you build an instrument, whenever you repair, you're getting to put tokens out here in the center. So you want to kind of focus on what your patron wants, but you also want to focus on this, because as you're building these instruments, you'll notice there's different rows that link to specific different instruments. When you build them, you get to put out one marker. When you perform them, you put out another marker. And when you repair them, you put out a third type of marker. At the end of the game, you're going to look at who has control of each of these different areas, and that's going to be some significant points at the end of the game. So your patrons are giving you points whenever they flip. They're giving you a significant amount of points, but then this is going to give you a significant amount of points as well. So you need to balance the needs of the orchestra with the needs of your patron, and also the needs of these different achievements at the top of the board. Those are kind of the three things you're trying to balance as you play the game.
Yeah, there are points that can be scored all throughout. Even when you repair, you're able to get some points here and there. When you finish an instrument, you're going to get some points innate in that. But the orchestra is very interesting, and again, weaving that theme in, control means your first chair in those positions. And the way these tokens work is interesting because you can perform, you can repair, and you put these smaller tokens out. You can actually get a bonus when you place, but to get that bonus again, someone has to sort of outplace you. So if you have one of those one of those little tokens, if someone comes in and puts their second little token, so they have two, then they'll get that bonus and they'll seize first chair. But if someone ever builds an instrument and there's no instrument there already, that will lock down first chair. So you can see these instruments are in place. Those can no longer, the bonuses can no longer be taken. You could put tokens there, but you're not going to get you're not going to get the first chair. You're not going to get control of that space.
Right. Building the instruments is kind of the pinnacle of what you can do. A lot of the patrons do require you to build a specific instrument, and then it's optional usually. There might be a performance or a repair, but building the instruments is key. Building instruments requires resources. It's a multi-step process because there's a lot going on the player board. You're going to see some spots that hold resources. We are limited. You're also going to see these spots that hold trophies. Those are not only points, but you're unlocking some bonuses or some kind of ongoing abilities. Or like this example is giving you a rare patron that is a noble that's going to give you a royal patron that gives you even more rewards. You've got the instruments you're working on. It's a two-step process where you rough it on one side and finish it on the other. There's a lot going on. Hopefully that was enough of an explanation of the player board because I don't want to talk I could talk for 30 minutes. I'm not going to.
Well, the roughing and the finishing is a big part. That's on the sides of the player board. That drives the game in terms of getting those instruments built. And getting instruments built, I do believe that is one of the core things you have to do. Those are the primary things that those patrons are looking for. There may be some secondary things they're looking for, which include the performances and repairing, but building instruments, roughing them on this one, and finishing them on the other, that's what's going to be a big driver, and that's what drives your need for a lot of the resources. You can get resources at the market, and like we said, you can go to those locations, and a lot of the secondary actions will let you gather those resources. It's a fair amount going on in this game for sure.
It is, and we've given you kind of a brief overview of what all the actions do, but each of these actions can actually be upgraded as well, which is really cool. You can get special powers. As you go up the different tracks, you're going to unlock special cards that link to specific discs. You'll put a disc on that card, and it gives you another asymmetric power. When you take that action, you get some kind of benefit that nobody else does. So again, that's another way to kind of plan ahead or to kind of think about what strategy you want to have, because the first person to get to each of these spots is going to get their full pick of the entire deck. And some of those are better for your strategy than others. And there could be a little, hate drafting there as well. If you beat someone to the punch.
Sure, you might see one that could really benefit
right,
them.
and you want to snake that away from them. So, yeah, like you said, I mean, there is a ton going on here. We could talk about this game through multiple videos.
We could. I would say those, I promise this will be the last thing we talk about. Those tracks, I just do want to give you a very clear idea of what those bonuses are. Those discs that you'll get a card, and when you look at this one says, when I take the repair action, reduce the cost by 1. I'm going to take one of my discs and place it there and then get a disc that has that symbol on it. So whenever I place this now, it is a 3. So if I place this on the repair, it's a 3. And when I use this one here, that's only when I can get that bonus when I go to the repair action. And not to mention, some of these other things just let you do a lot. I went up this track that let me rough 2 instruments at once, or maybe get up here and let you finish 2 instruments at once. Basically just making you more efficient at everything you do, not only there, but also with performances.
Yeah, and we did do some paid work on this, some sponsored content, so
Yes.
I try not to influence, you with my opinions, but I will say, this is a game that after I played, I immediately wanted to play again.
Yeah, I will say, take this all with a grain of salt. As you know, from the top of the video, this is sponsored content. But this thing is going to be a special release this year for sure. I think a lot of people who are looking for a medium, maybe leaning more towards heavy Euro that is just absolutely dripping in theme, you're going to want to try this one for sure. If you have any questions all about it, though, go check out their campaign or get down in the comments below. We'll try to answer whatever we can. Until next time, make sure everyone has fun at the table, and we'll see you then.